welcome Sister Arnold. Maybe you could tell our listening audience your name and...
Oh, well, my name, I'm Sister Arnold Benedetto. Before I entered the convent, I was Gertrude Benedetto. So my family, and I was Aunt Gertrude, you know. Well, anyway.
Well, why did you happen to choose the name Arnold?
No, one of my brothers, I have two brothers, Jesuit priests, and Frank and Arnold. And the name Francis, the Frank had already been taken by so many people. But so I took it after my brother. And where did he get it? My father had a brother, Arnaldo. My father came over from Italy. Do you want to know about that?
Please, yes. How interesting.
Papa came over from Italy when he was 14 years old. He didn't have a high school education, but he got a job as an office boy in Macon, Georgia.
Right.
And he eventually became the office manager. They tell me that they made him answer the telephone because he had an accent, and there were girls in the office who teased him. So they put him on the telephone. He polished up his English. So Papa didn't have him. Anyway, I don't know how I got off on this.
Tell me, he was the office manager, and then eventually...
He became the manager of the whole company, and then he became the president of the company. And it was a laundry business. You think that's not much, but it was a big business. In those days, this isn't back in the... Well, he came over to this country at the turn of the century, around 1900. So in the 1900s, they had laundry and dry cleaning, so it was a big, and they had trucks that went out to get people's laundry, all that. Anyway.
When did you come into the world?
Well, I was the sixth. There were 7 of us children. Now, my mother, she was right from Georgia. All her family, they were old-time Georgians. In fact, we have a land, a land grant from George II. This goes way back. A grant to a Kennington for land in South Carolina. And eventually the Britain moved to central Georgia. And so Macon was in all around Bibb County, all around that. So my mother was from an old-time Georgia family. But that combination was a good, and they were both devout Catholics, honey. Our family was Catholic with a capital C. But anyway.
Did you attend Catholic grade school?
Oh, yes. We had Mount DeSales Academy in Macon, Georgia. We were lucky. Those were Sisters of Mercy. And so the girls would go to the convent school, we called it. The boys had to go to the parochial school. So that was St. Joseph's, our church. We had Jesuit priests and Mercy Sisters in the middle of Georgia. In those days, that was remarkable. It really was.
What about high school?
There was a lot of antipathy against Catholic. Pardon?
What about high school?
Well, these same sisters had high school. We Mount DeSales Academy and high school. But there was no high school for boys. So my brothers were sent over to Alabama to a Catholic. It was on the grounds of Spring Hill College, the Spring Hill High School. So Frank and Arnold were sent over there for their high school years. And, of course, they became Jesuits and all that. But
the mystery for me is how you came in contact with Adrian Dominicans from Macon, Georgia to Adrian.
Oh, that is a jump. It's a big. Well, we had to go to Catholic colleges. As I told you, that Papa didn't have a high school education, but he wanted all of his children to have a college education. So Georgia certainly had no Catholic colleges. There was no Catholic college for girls in the South. Spring Hill was all boys. Now, so Siena Heights was the one, and it was very reasonable because there were going to be 4 of us in college all at the same time. So, and we were not rich. In fact, these were the Depression years, and my father and mother watched the money very closely.
Well, how did you hear about Siena Heights?
I had two sisters in this congregation. You want to know then how did they hear about it? Originally, how did...
Were they cousins?
Yes, the Callahans. It's Rita Marie and Martin Marie. But the story goes all the way back to Mother Gerald. Mother Gerald passed through Macon, Georgia one time, going down to Florida, where there were a lot of our missions in Florida. She stopped in Macon to visit a girl she had taught some years ago, Rose Clark. I remember her distinctly. Now, I know this is strange, but this is the true story. She stopped to visit that woman, or that girl, and I guess she made a big impression, Mother Gerald. As far as I know, that's the first contact we had with any Adrian Dominicans. And so two of the Callahans, Rita Marie and they went to college up here. Several Macon girls came up here, and some of them entered the convent. You're too young to remember them, but Rose Edwina, did you know, well, maybe you knew her, Sister Rose Edwina. She was a Macon girl.
And what did you major in?
And when
I bet it was history.
College, you mean, when I went to Siena?
At Siena, yeah.
Well, we called it social studies, I think. I just say I majored in history. Sister Ann Joachim, I had wonderful teachers at Siena. Sister Ann Joachim was my major teacher, though I don't think she was the best one. But Agnes Cecile, did you know Agnes Cecile? She taught me a survey of world civilization. It was the freshman history survey course, which was very good. It was at the same time I was taking a course in the survey of English Lit. Sister Jerome, you remember Sister Jerome?
Oh, yes.
Jerome, okay.
Yes.
She was, who else did I have? But I had wonderful teachers, and Sister Benedicta Marie was the dean, and she's the one who told me I had a vocation. I didn't want to hear that, but anyway.
Tell me this. How could you, as a history teacher from the South, teach the Civil War?
Honey, I told them, I gave them the true I told them how straight how it was, the way I heard it from my mother's, not my mother herself, her own family. They were too young. But my mother had uncles who fought in the Civil War, and one lost a leg and somebody else was killed. It was just tragic. One of my aunts just said to me, said, we were invaded. That was, and we said very definitely it was Mr. Lincoln's war. I read something the other day. Somebody said Lincoln should have just let the South go, let them go, that way. But Lincoln wanted to preserve the Union. So anyway, I enjoyed that course teaching. Truthfully, after some years at Barry, I was told to teach a course called The History of the South. And I learned a lot. I had never had a course in the history of the South, but there were some textbooks written by them.
So, was education the focus of your ministry throughout your years?
Well, my mother had been a teacher, and she encouraged us all. And going to Siena Heights, you could get a teaching certificate along with the bachelor's degree. For 4 years, just taking these dumb education courses, the history and philosophy of education methods. And I did take the methods on the high school level. So when I graduated from Siena Heights, besides having the BA, I had a lifetime certificate, a Michigan lifetime certificate, and I'm sure they don't do that anymore. So the day of profession, after I was professed, I was sent right to Dominican High. And I had 8 wonderful years there. I loved Dominican High.
Well, besides Dominican High, what other mission or assignment?
After Dominican High, I was sent to Barry College. When I first got there the summer, I thought, what in the dickens am I going to do at Berry College? But anyway, I was assigned, I taught history, and I had been going to Catholic U in the summers getting a master's degree. So I did have a master's degree when I was in, and I taught history there. Sister Edmund was my superior. My Sister Edmund had been my first superior at Dominican High.
What I'm interested in, what was the challenge you had in any of your assignments? I mean, even where you lived, what were some of the challenges you had?
Oh, my land. Well, I was told one time that I had to teach typing, for instance, and that was a challenge. And Sister Mary Arnold said to me, said, "Oh, it's easy. You know, you get them to work and all that." But that was a challenge. But I thoroughly enjoyed all my classroom teaching. At Berry, after I'd been there for a while, when Sister Trinita became the secretary on the congregation level, I was made to be the dean at Berry. Now remember, we were a small Catholic girls, all girls. And it was in 1962. I was made to be the dean. So I had to give up some of my classroom. I held on to some teaching for a while. I remember church history was the last one that I held on to. I liked that. But
were you at Berry when John Kennedy died?
I was we were teaching history, and we got an announcement over we all rushed to from the classroom. Have you been on the campus at Berry? Yes. We just rushed out of the classroom right to the chapel and pray. Oh, we were just all there, just devastated. And I think it seemed to me that whole weekend we were just glued to the TV and watching that. Mm-hmm.
And exactly how long were you at Berry?
Well, I was at Berry a long time. They sent me to Catholic U to get a doctorate in 1957. I was at Catholic U from 57 to 60. Actually, I never really got a doctorate. I did a dissertation and a conference and all that. But anyway, I went back to Berry. So I was at Berry 3 different times. And altogether, it comes to about like 45 years.
Oh, my.
It's a long time.
They must have a statue of you there.
Well, no. Listen, speaking of statues, somebody was complaining, make this a Catholic camp at Berry. It should be a Catholic campus. You know, you need some statues. So we've got a statue of the Blessed Mother in one place, and we just recently got a statue of St. Dominic. And it's somebody sent me a picture of it. I have not seen the St. Dominic statue, but I'm tickled at that. I think that's good. Anyway,
I'd really be interested if you had 15 minutes to talk to anyone living or dead, or a spirit, whatever the person might be. With whom would you want to have that special time?
Oh, my goodness. Well, Rosemary Ferguson would be one.
And why would that be?
Oh, she's a lovely person, a lovely lady, and she makes me feel so good. Every time she says something to make me feel good, it's kind of flattering. But
Well, I understand that you know what's going on in the world more than anyone your age.
No, not at all. And I'm sorry that I can't keep up with things better than I do. I watch CNN as much as I can. And at night time we watch Jeopardy. Do you watch Jeopardy?
I watched it. Yes.
Every now and then I can answer the
Arnold, do you have
questions.
Do you have any words of wisdom for our sisters who are going to be delegates at our general chapter?
Yeah. The chapter. I just want them to speak up, to speak their minds, say what they really think. But and I think we're doing quite well. And we have wonderful Elise Garcia sisters, and all the young sisters we have. I'm quite impressed, really. I really think that
How long have you been at the Dominican Life Center?
4 years. 4 years. I came in 2011 in September.
Was that a challenge when you? A difficult transition.
Yeah, you asked me about the challenge. That was very hard to leave Miami. Really, it was, and I still miss Florida. You know, we could go out outside all year round practically. We did have we had to turn on the heat. But
what have you come to love about your time here?
Here in Adrian? I keep saying this is my home. I have to keep. The very fact that this morning I overslept, and it's the first time since I've been here, and it really made me feel like, well, I must be beginning to feel at home, because honey, it was almost 7:30 when I woke up. Now that has not happened since I've been here, and so I do want to feel at home. I don't feel like a visitor all the time. Everybody seems to know all about them a lot more than I do. But anyway, that's okay.
Through the years with living in community and being at Berry, is there some sister or sisters that come to mind as being extraordinary mentors and inspirations to you that you've taught with or lived with?
Well, first of all, in college, talking about mentors, Sister Benedetto Marie was a great inspiration. But she was strict and tough. You remember those were the days when we wore those awful outfits at gym, for gyms. We even had stockings. And I was commissioned to go to her to ask if we could please get rid of the stockings and wear ankles. She gave that. But it was don't get me talking on all these side subjects. After Sister Benedetto Marie, Sister Mary Alice Collins and Edmund, both of whom have reputations of being tough nuts, and they're not very popular. And I can't say that I really liked them a whole lot, but they were wonderful women, and they were so good. Community life, it was very important. And professional reading is not just the religion, but Mary Alice and Edmund both. And
who was the president of Berry when you first went there?
When I first went there, it was Mother Gerald. Gerald. Then she died in Sister Mother Genevieve for just a short time. Mother Genevieve. And then the first resident president was Sister Dorothy Brown. And that's when I was the dean. And we didn't always get along. I mean, she said to me one time after a faculty meeting, says, "You're supposed to be my support, my help." And I said, "Well, you don't want me to say yes if I really don't agree." We had our differences. Dorothy Brown was the president, and she was followed by Sister Trinita. And then Gina Lockley. So I was away from Berry during most of the 70s, back in 70, from 71 to 79. And I went back in 79, and so then I was there ever since. Mm-hmm.
And you saw the growth at...
Oh, indeed. When I first went there with this small Catholic girls' college, and we didn't take any blacks, and that was terrible. But I was the dean when we got our first full-time black student. This priest came to me and said, in his parish, he had a wonderful young woman who we should take. Said she'll need a complete scholarship, but she'll be a credit to the institute. So we took her. She did not live on campus, but she was a math major, and she was wonderful. And she went 4 years to Berry. She was the first black student. In those days, people had to send in their application for admission, they had to send a picture. It was awful. But then we think back now.
Is that because of the South, or?
I think a lot of colleges had that at that time. That would have been back in the 50s.
Well, now with our black president, what advice would you give him?
Oh, well, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I'd like to see it.
What advice? He's got, a year left?
Yes, Obama has another year, and I just hope that he is able to control his temper for a year. He's always been presidential, I think. I like whatever he wants. I like it with Obama. After I graduated from college, I had planned to enter the convent the following September. I graduated in June. Well, I had told the priest in confession that I said, well, I'm afraid I have a religious vocation. He said, what are you afraid of? I said, well, I don't want to tell my parents. I thought they would push me in. I really did not want the religious vocation, but I really felt the call. And the word vocation really meant a call, and I felt that I've got to do it. God is calling me. But so, anyway, I didn't tell after I graduated, my parents came up here for graduation. We were sitting around talking, and Sister Philomena, a music teacher at that time, she asked me what was I going to do now that I was graduating. I said, well, if I had my own way, I'd go over there to that building. That was the North Building, the what you call it, the novitiate. She said, oh, you would? She said, I'll help you whatever you need anyway. That's all I said. Well, so we went home. In the middle of the summer, I got a letter from Sister Benedicta Marie. It was a carbon copy of what she sent to my parents. And in the letter to her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Benedetto, by now, I'm sure your daughter has told you of her desire to come to Adrian. Well, that night, Papa was in the bathroom shaving. I went there and I said, Papa, did you get a letter from Sister Benedicta Marie? He said, yes. I said, well, how'd you like it? He said, well, it's all right with me, but I tell you, your mother sure doesn't like it. And so forth. There was a coldness. There was the strangest thing with my mother. For 2 or 3 days, she didn't talk to me. And we just finally, after 3 days, she sat me down. She was so serious, not like my mother at all. I always went. She said, you want to take a vow of obedience? You be obedient to your parents. You know very well your father and I had plans. I don't know what she was talking about. So I was crying by that time. Anyway, I wrote to Sister Benedicta Marie, and I said, I can't come. I don't have my parents. So I always say, I learned obedience at home. So I went off to school, to Catholic U, took social work. And at the end of the first semester at Catholic U, I wrote home to my parents. I had been home for Christmas, but in those days, the semesters came at the end of January. I wrote home, I said, I've got to register for second semester. I said, help me decide. I have to major in, do I want to major in medical social work, psychiatric social work, group welfare, or public, something like that. There were 4 classes. Help me decide which of these to me. I got a letter back from my mother. She said, we can read between the lines of your letter. If you still want to go to Adrian, you know your father and I would never interfere with a religious vocation. But that was the thing. So I went to the telephone and I called Sister Benedicta Marie. And I said, I got my mother's permission. I said, so when do I come? She said, oh, come right away. I said, oh, I can't come right away. I got to go home and say goodbye to my... I said, can I come in September? She said, well, the entrance day was February 2nd. Well, this was now January 20-something. But she said, I'll talk to Mother Gerald, I'll let you know. So that afternoon, I got a telegram from Sister Benedicta Marie. Says, Mother Gerald says you may come February 10th. That gave me 8 days more than the ordinary plan. Anyway, that's what we did. That's how it happened. But I've always felt that objection that my mother helped strengthen my vocation. I never anymore, after I entered, I never had any doubts. Some of the girls had doubts about their vocation, you know. I was convinced that that's where I belonged.
You were a rarity.
A rarity?
No,
Well, I know I was a rarity. In college, I was a rarity. I remember that was.
But I mean, entering with the education you had.
Yes, I was lucky because some of them, my Mercy sister said she was on the 10-year plan getting her education, 10 summers, you know, all that.
Well, one last thing. We have a new candidate now. Catherine, have you met her?
Kathy Frazier. Yes, I met her. I was on duty at Madden Hall the day she entered. A flower, not flowers, but a floral thing or plant from a florist company came for her. So that's how was my first introduction. She seems very, very promising, and I see her in our chapel from time to time. Mm-hmm.
If you could sit down with her right now, what would you I want to say warn her about, or what would you encourage her about being an Adrian Dominican?
Oh, well, to be as much of a help as you can, to cooperate, and to do some good spiritual reading would be a big help. So, because I don't know what kind of novitiate they go through now. You see, we had a regular novitiate regimented, it was good, but they don't have that. So I think you to do a lot of good spiritual reading. Oh, I don't know. I'm not good at this sort of thing.
And I know your sister. Where does your sister live?
My sister, Mary, she lives in Florida, Rocky Edge, Florida. It's just south of Cocoa. But I told you there were 7 of us. And there was Frank, Arnold, Nina, that's Annina. And it was Italian for Annina, little Ann, Joseph, Mary, Gertrude, and Elizabeth. The 2 oldest, Frank and Arnold, became Jesuit priests. The 2 youngest, Gertrude and Elizabeth, became sisters. She went to the Mercies. I went to the Dominican. And she went to the Mercies right out of high school. I went on 4 years of college. See? So, and she died about 5 years ago. She fell and hit her head and died within a few days. It was very sad. Mm-hmm.
Your sister's been here to visit you, hasn't she?
Yes. So the only ones left, the whole family, they've all died except my sister Mary and me, the 2 of us. Mm-hmm. And we were very close.
And you talked to her?
Yes. Supposed to, she had said a couple of years ago she would call me every Sunday night. Well, she's getting now forgetful. She's a year older than I am. Mm-hmm. She's 94.
If she were sitting right here, right now, what would you want to say to her?
Well, we would probably be talking about old times in our childhood because we did so much together. We went all through school. We were in the same grades all along.
But if this was that this was the last time you would see her, what would you want to say to her?
We would talk about how grateful we are for the family we had, the background we had, the education that our parents gave us, the wonderful family life we had, and then she had a wonderful married life. She had 6 children, and I've had a terrific religious life with Dominican High and Barry College, Adrian Mother House. What more? I mean, what more can you ask for?
Amen.